In the previous episode, we looked at Meno, and today we are going back to prison where Socrates was awaiting execution. And we are going to look at the dialogue Phaedo, which some people pronounce as Phaedo. Phaedo was a student and follower of Socrates. In this dialogue, he is with a group of guys to whom he shares the philosophical discussions he and his friends had with Socrates on the day of his death. He tells them that nothing gives him more pleasure than thinking and talking about Socrates or listening to those who talk about him. He says he felt no pity for Socrates because Socrates appeared to be happy and fearless, like he was dying a noble death. He says those who were there on that day were laughing and weeping. It was a mixture of emotions of pleasure and pain, emotions of happiness and sadness. And since Socrates was about to die, he saw the last conversation he had with his friends and followers as an opportunity for him to talk to them about the journey to the afterlife. And the first thing he talks about is suicide. And he says, humans are the possessions of the gods, or they are the possessions of God. They belong to God and not to themselves. We humans are in a kind of prison, and we must not try to escape or free ourselves from this prison. It is God's decision and not ours when our time in this life should end. And he gives an example saying, if one of your possessions decided to kill itself when you had not given it any sign that you wished it to die, you would be angry and inflict punishment upon it if you could. And someone objected and said, if one should not kill himself, why should the wisest person leave behind his service to God and choose to die? And Socrates explains that his death is not an act of suicide, but a result of obeying the divine will of God. Remember earlier, he talked about this divine voice that restrained him from taking certain actions. And now he says, this voice was silent in the days leading up to his trial and death. He interpreted this silence as a sign that his impending death was aligned with the divine will of God. Living this life does not mean abandoning the service of God, but his soul will continue to serve God in a better and purer way in the afterlife. He then explains why he spent the rest of his life practicing philosophy. And he says the aim of practicing philosophy in the right way is to practice for dying. It does not make sense that the person who has been preparing for death all his life now fears death. He explains how true philosophers live and how they prepare for death. Socrates believed that death is the separation of the soul from the body. And he says, the true philosopher is not concerned with the pleasures of the flesh. He does not value the pleasures of the body. Pleasures derived from food, drinks, nice clothes, and so forth. The philosopher is more concerned with the soul than with the body. The philosopher frees the soul from the body as much as possible. He says you cannot acquire knowledge with your physical senses. It is through reasoning that anything becomes clear to the soul. Whenever the soul tries to examine anything through the body and its physical senses, the body deceives it. The soul of the philosopher escapes or flees the body and seeks to be by itself. The just, the good, and the beautiful are not seen with physical eyes. Things are grasped or understood perfectly when approached with thought alone. The body confuses the soul and does not allow it to acquire truth and wisdom. The body fills us with wants, desires, fears, and all sorts of illusions and nonsense. The body wants wealth and it keeps us too busy to practice philosophy. It disrupts us from investigations. It confuses us and causes fear so that we don't see the truth. Pure knowledge comes when we escape from the body and see things in themselves with the soul by itself. While we live, we shall be closest to knowledge if we refrain as much as possible from association with the body until God himself frees us.